Since the computer started ranking tennis players in 1973, roughly 30 men have reached world number 1. Every single one of them won a major, except one. He got there without a Grand Slam title, held the top spot for 6 weeks total, and this is the part that still doesn't sound real, played fewer matches as the best player on the planet than most pros play in a single week. The records say 3. Some say 4. Either way, that's the entire reign. The criticism started immediately. Andre Agassi said out loud what most of the locker room was thinking, that the next step, the one that would make it real, was winning a major. He never took it. And 28 years later, he's still the punchline in every argument about whether the rankings mean anything at all. But here's the thing nobody says out loud. Go and watch him play. Because the deeper you go into this story, the harder it gets to hold on to the word worst. And by the end of this video, I think you're going to have a genuinely uncomfortable problem with it. This is the story of Marcelo Rios. You have to understand what the number 1 ranking is supposed to mean. It isn't a trophy, it's an average. It's a rolling 52-week ledger of everything you did, everywhere, on every surface, against everyone. It doesn't care about your best fortnight, it cares about your worst Tuesday in February, which means it's honest in a way we don't always like. And in the mid-90s, the man climbing that ledger was a left-hander from Santiago with a ponytail, a permanent scowl, and hands that didn't seem to belong to a human being. He'd turned pro as a teenager. He was 5'9" to this day, the shortest man ever to hold the number 1 ranking, and this was the age of the giants. Sampras, Ivanisevic, Krajicek. Men who ended points before they started. He had none of that. What he had instead was timing. He took the ball early, flat, off both wings, and he redirected it into places that made bigger men look slow. He didn't grind, he didn't grunt, he didn't work the crowd. He looked most of the time mildly annoyed to be there, and he was not interested in being liked, not by the press, not by the tour, not by you. Before him, the closest South America had ever come to the top of the sport was Guillermo Vilas, a giant of the 70s, and the comparison every journalist reached for. Rios had a single line ready for it. Vilas finished number 2. He was number 1. That was the personality. Enormous gift, zero warmth. Nobody had any idea how quickly it was all about to happen. 1998. He opens the season by winning the title in Auckland and carries that straight into Melbourne. By the time he reaches the final of the Australian Open, his winning streak is up to 11 matches. His first major final, he's 22, and then he loses it in the worst possible way. Straight sets, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. A man being taken apart by Peter Korda without ever finding a single foothold in the match. Hold on to that scoreline. It comes back later, and it's worse than you think. Now watch what he does with it. Instead of disappearing for 3 months the way most players would, he goes to the American hard courts and wins Indian Wells. Then he goes to Miami and wins that too. Back-to-back Masters titles in the same month, something only 2 men in history had ever managed before him. In the Miami final, he beats Andre Agassi in straight sets. And on the 30th of March 1998, he ends Pete Sampras's 102-week run at the summit and becomes the number 1 player in the world. The first man from South America ever to do it. He flies home. 10,000 people fill the streets around the presidential palace in Santiago. There's a reception, there's a balcony. There's a president waiting for him. For a country with almost no history in this sport, it is the biggest thing that has ever happened. He is, at that exact moment, statistically the best tennis player alive. And it is about to fall apart faster than anyone thought was possible. Here's the part almost nobody mentions when they call him a fraud. Days after becoming number 1, he flies to Buenos Aires to play Davis Cup for Chile. He wins his match. He also gets injured doing it. And because of that injury, he can't travel to Monte Carlo to defend the Masters title he won there the year before, the biggest clay trophy he owns. The moment those points come off the ledger, the number 1 ranking goes with them. Read that again. He didn't lose the top spot in a match. He lost it in an airport, to a tournament he wasn't fit enough to enter because he'd gone and played for his country. 4 weeks at the top in the spring. He takes it back for another 2 in August, 6 weeks in total, and 3 matches, maybe 4. That's the entire on-court record of his time as the best player in the world. There are qualifiers who play more tennis in a fortnight, which is really where the reputation comes from. Not from him being bad, from him being absent. No coronation, no title defense, no signature win from the throne. He got to the summit, and there is barely any footage of him standing on it. So everyone was left with one thing to argue about: the missing major. Now I want to push back, because there's a lazy version of this story, and I don't buy it. The lazy version says he was a glitch, a soft draw, a hot spring, a ranking system that got embarrassed. That reading dies the second you look at what he actually won. 18 tour titles, 5 Masters events, the tier directly below the majors, where every top player in the world turns up and nobody gets an easy week. He beat Agassi over 5 sets to win the Grand Slam Cup that same year. And across 1997, 1998, and 1999, he took Monte Carlo, Rome, and Hamburg. The first player ever to complete all 3 clay masters on the surface that refuses to lie for you. He finished 1998 ranked number 2 in the world. So no, this wasn't a man who fell into the ranking. This was a man who was, for about 18 months, genuinely one of the 2 or 3 best players alive, and who never once put together the specific 14-day version of it. And now that scoreline comes back. 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, 6 games. That is the complete body of work of Marcelo Rios in Grand Slam finals. 6 games won, 1 afternoon in Melbourne, and then nothing, ever again. Which brings us to the number that reframes the whole thing. He is the only man in the history of the sport to be ranked number 1 as a junior, number 1 as a professional, and number 1 as a senior on the Legends Tour. He was the best in the world before the majors mattered. He was the best in the world after the majors stopped mattering. And in the years in between, the only ones that count, the only ones anybody ever brings up, he came away with nothing. That's not a bad player. That's something stranger and much sadder. That's a man who was number 1 at every stage of his life except the part in the middle. The injuries took the rest. Elbow, legs, then a back that wouldn't hold. He retired in 2004 at 28, an age at which several modern greats hadn't hit their peak yet. So, worst number 1 in tennis history? By the only stat anyone cares about, yes. He is the single asterisk on a list of about 30 names, and every man who has reached the top since has won a major. But I think we call him the worst because it's easier than admitting what he actually exposed. The ranking never promised us trophies. It promised us the truth about a year of tennis. And one year, it told us the truth about a man who was better than almost everyone and still couldn't win the thing that would have made him real to us. He didn't fail the system. He revealed what the system was always measuring. So tell me in the comments and be honest. Does the number 1 ranking mean anything without a major attached to it? Or is a Grand Slam the only currency that has ever actually counted? Because I have a feeling this one's going to get heated down there. And if you enjoyed this, a like genuinely helps more than you'd think. Subscribe for more tennis deep dives, and I'll see you in the next one.